To the virtual day of the NC Live Annual Conference. We're excited to have you join us here online today. You are in StoryWalks in Eastern North Carolina, promoting literacy and community wellness. If you're looking for a different virtual session, you can find the Zoom links on the schedule on the conference website, Sched. My name is Cass Rosa. I'm the moderator for this session, and I'll just share a couple things before we start. So at NC Live events, we value the presence and active participation of all attendees. And by joining us, you agree to uphold the principles of our code of conduct, which can be found at our website, which I will link in the chat really quickly. So in the interest of time, we'll save Q&A for the end of the presentation. So if you have a question, you can put it in the Q&A box, which can be found in your Zoom toolbar at the bottom of the screen. I will be monitoring the Q&A and the chat in case anyone needs any assistance. So we can get started in just a minute, but please make sure that you stay muted during the presentation. And this session is also being recorded, and the presenter slides will be posted after the conference if you want to access them later. So it's my pleasure to introduce Laura Bright. Laura Bright is the collection strategist and assessment librarian at ECU's Joyner Library. And as co-PI, she helped write an LSTA Easy Grant to bring StoryWalks to Greenville, North Carolina. Laura developed this presentation with Heather Harden, the Youth Services Librarian at Farmville Public Library, but was unable to attend today. But we're really happy to have Laura, and if you're ready to get started, I will mute myself.
I'm ready. Thank you so much. So we can go ahead to the next slide, but I'll talk to you about promoting literacy and communities with StoryWalks. And this presentation will be particularly interesting to individuals who'd like to learn about library services and programming that bring together their communities and connections and partnerships between libraries and or other entities. And today I'm going to talk to you about planning for and setting up a StoryWalk, selecting children's titles, engaging community partners, offering community events at StoryWalks, and collecting community feedback. And over on the left, you can see a StoryWalk that's here in Greenville, North Carolina, that I helped with. And then on the right, you can see a StoryWalk in Farmville. We can go ahead to the next one. So what is a StoryWalk? A StoryWalk or a story trail is an activity that combines walking and reading sequential pages from a children's story. And the titles are usually rotated at least seasonally. And by that, I mean that a new story is just put into the stands. And StoryWalk was created in 2007 by Anne Ferguson of Montpelier, Vermont. I'm sorry, I had a second there. And I put in some links towards the end of this presentation with some different resources for you, and one of them is going to connect you to a resource giving you that background information. And if you're looking for a story trail near you, the State Library of North Carolina's website has a story trail map that's interactive, and you can click on the different locations and find out how often they rotate stories and what organizations are affiliated with those locations. You can go ahead. So the StoryWalks that I'm involved with are the City of Greenville StoryWalks, and we have two different locations. There are two different parks here in Greenville, actually, and we offer bilingual stories and activities to go with those stories, and we rotate those out seasonally. We were funded with an LSTA Easy Grant almost a year ago, and there are a couple of local public libraries that assist us with children's programming. We can go ahead. So I was a co-PI on this grant, and we included a strong narrative that emphasized our local users and community need. And we we performed research for the narrative, and we included local census data and county health data and information about factors such as languages spoken at home around our local community, the percent of third graders reading at grade level, and the percent of community members living in poverty. The selection of StoryWalk locations included researching flood zones, considering the locations of parks, playgrounds, and schools, and visiting parks to observe terrain and space, looking at whether the ground was flat and walkable, whether there was pavement, and observing whether these areas tended to flood. We also communicated with the Greenville Recreation and Parks Department about the different locations and what would work for them, since they manage these parks. And what you see at the top there is one of our story stations that's actually a title page with the English at the top and then the Spanish. So we can go ahead to the next one. So we had some different partners. On this grant, our official partners were Shepherd Memorial Library, the Friends of Shepherd Memorial Library, which is located here in Greenville. They contributed matching funds. And also the City of Greenville Recreation and Parks Department. They donated personnel, space, and equipment to install and provide access to the StoryWalks at the 2 locations. And then for unofficial partners, we had both the Farmville Public Library and the Shepherd Memorial Library. They worked with us, and their children's librarians agreed to provide programming for us to help with our outreach efforts. And currently we have about 1 event per season at each of the 2 StoryWalk locations. And that's been just wonderful for me, not having to do that end of it and being able to rely on these children's librarians and the community that's really their expertise. And then, as well as being a named official partner and donating personnel, space, and equipment, Greenville Parks and Recreation has also invited us to participate at various events at the parks alongside other organizations to table and promote the StoryWalks, to hand out swag and talk to the families. And I wanted to mention that the public librarians are working together to provide collaborative programs. When I reached out to them, I told them I would be happy for either one of them to come one at a time, or if they wanted to work together on programs. And so far it's worked well to have them co-presenting, and one librarian will present the story and the other will present an activity. And I think that helps with the programming numbers as well, because they're advertising to 2 different libraries. We can go to the next one. So in terms of vendors and materials, I worked less on this part of the project than in selecting the stories and working with the local libraries and some other things that I'll talk about later. The co-PI on the grant did more of the things with the budget. So if someone were to ask me, I could not tell you off the top of my head how much we spent on any of these items, but the metal frames and signposts, they were where the majority of our funding went to. And I also thought it would be handy for you all to see the vendors that we got these different items from. We can go ahead to the next slide. So when I was looking at considering story titles for our StoryWalks, some of the considerations in no particular order that I included were the page count of the stories, because our StoryWalks are permanent, and those metal signs out there, we're not going to dig them up every time we put out a new story. So if we've got 20 out there, it's always going to be 20 different stations for the story pages. So when I was looking at titles, I really wanted books that were going to be pretty close to about 20 frames. And I will talk to you in a minute about how I addressed it when it didn't quite match up right. Looking at the audience ages, I tried to emphasize story time titles, so about pre-K through grade 1. And one thing that I thought was great about that is that I did not want to have I didn't want to have titles for older children that would have more text on the page, because that sort of activity doesn't lend itself to walking along to the next station. So having less text on the page was a good idea to me and has worked well. And we gave priority to titles that were available in a bilingual format. And if we could not find a book that we wanted bilingually, then we would purchase both English and Spanish versions of the title. In terms of themes, we emphasized stories that were about nature, health, family, and community, because really this project is about improving literacy in the community and getting community members and families together out in nature and doing these healthy activities together. And I also looked at the popularity of authors and titles, again, looking for some storytime favorites. So we can move to the next one. And then those are a few of the example titles that I chose. You can see that I really went with titles that lent themselves to seasonal themes, since we were are rotating the stories seasonally, especially. So we've got Bear Snores On by Carmel Wilson, Quick as a Cricket by Audrey Wood, The Very Hungry Caterpillar, and Brown Bear, What Do You See? Both by Eric Carle, and The Snowy Day by Ezra Jack Keats, as well as The Mitten by Jan Brett. There were a few others, but those are some of them. So for our story stations, for lack of a better word, that we have for where each of the pages are, we actually created those using slides. And we used Canva, but you could have used PowerPoint or Google Slides or something else would have worked just as well. So the first thing I did was to plan out a list of books for the year to keep us rotating through these different stories. And we used one copy of each title to take apart and scan the pages, another title as a backup in case there were issues with the original, and then we retained a third copy. So after we scanned the pages, we then added them into our slideshow template, and we added activities. And what I mean by that, I'll come back to in a second. Then we translated our activities into Spanish so that we would have bilingual text available. And we set up a visitor survey online using Qualtrics, and we added to the final slide of each of these stories a QR code for our visitors, and the survey was available in English and Spanish. So after all of this, we sent our slideshow to the printers, and the printed pages we then insert into the different story stations seasonally. So what I mean by activities, I've got a couple of different examples here. The first image that you see at the top is from Lola Plants a Garden, and you can see the English and Spanish text from the story first with the illustration from the story. And what I mean by activity is what you see under that, where it says, do you like to visit the library? What is your favorite book? And an activity would sometimes be something to think about, or I would direct children to do something. just to make the experience more enriching for one thing, in situations like this where I'm just adding on to an existing page. And below that, you'll see a different example of an activity. I think that I made this one to go along with Brown Bear, What Do You See? Because it was about colors. And that was an example of a title that had way less than 20 pages, which was how many stations I needed. And in order to handle that, I would come up with just a related page that seemed to go with the story that gave children something to think about or do. So we can go ahead to the next one. And on this slide, you'll see on your left what the slides look like for the initial welcome to each StoryWalk, where it's got the cover of the book. And I would also just take all of this text as a template and change different details. So for this example, themes in the story include patience, family bonding, and sharing with others. Your child will learn about nature and taking initiative to create something beautiful with the support of loved ones. So if it was a different story, I would just change out those themes and your child will learn about. And then on the right, you see what our survey pages looked like at the end of each of the stories. So we can go to the next one. So again, we had 2 locations here in Greenville. The names of those parks are Green Springs Park and Wildwood Park. And for the activities that we've had so far since starting this project, were our initial kickoff, which was at Wildwood Park in January 2025, that should say. I'm sorry. And this event was attended by individuals from Farmville Public Library, Shepherd Memorial Library, and the City of Greenville Recreation and Parks Department. And the public librarians provided us with some story time programming. We advertised the event on our library social media and the website and the local news. It was pretty well attended. I want to say we had, I think, about 80 people, and we had some small prizes and activities to go along with the story time. So with the family events, we're currently doing about 1 per season at each of the 2 locations. And here at ECU Joyner Library, what I'm doing is just reaching out to the public librarians who have been helping us with the programming and scheduling for them, and making sure to coordinate with Parks and Rec to make sure that that timing works for them as well, and there aren't other activities scheduled in the parks at the same time. And I also attend the story times to support the programming. I clean off the story stations because they do get dirty with dirt and pollen and spiders and things. And I answer visitors' questions, and I also bring some story time swag like flyers and stickers. In terms of other outreach, we've attended some parks community programs, just tabling and providing literature and some small prizes for visitors. And we do have some promotional materials like stickers, bookmarks, and flyers that are available in English and Spanish. Okay, next, please. So for our survey, I created 10 anonymous questions accessible via QR code, as I showed you at the end of each of the StoryWalks, available in English and Spanish. We had a consent question. We wanted to know how many children were visiting, what ages the children were, where the visitors reside, whether that was in Greenville, a nearby location, or other, which languages are spoken at home. How did you hear about the StoryWalk? We ask the visitors to rate their experience on a scale of 1 to 5, and then to also rate their children's interest on a scale from 1 to 5. And we asked what parts of the StoryWalk the visitors liked most, and we also had an open-ended opportunity for comments and suggestions. Okay, next, please. So we had 61 usable responses. January through April, there were a few that we had to throw out where somebody had opened the survey but just not responded to anything. So the majority of the visitors were attending without children, and as we get into these survey questions later, we'll see that most of the visitors weren't aware that the StoryWalk was there when they attended. So I'm thinking that maybe as word gets out more, we'll see an increase in visitors with children. So out of the visitors that did bring at least one child was the most common number of children to have. And in terms of the ages of the children attending, ages 9 and up was the age category that had the highest percentage, being 15%. And most of our visitors, unsurprisingly, were coming from right here in Greenville, North Carolina. So we can move to the next one, please. For a language spoken at home, most of our users reported English, and we also had Korean and Spanish reported. For other, those ended up being write-ins for English and Spanish, even though they could have selected them otherwise. And for the method by which visitors were informed about the StoryWalk, most of them said that they noticed it on their visit to the park, and not that they had heard about it via a library or social media. Okay, next, please. So most of our visitors had a very highly positive experience, with 94% saying that either their experience was good or excellent, and that's 94% out of responses to the questions other than in NA. And 88% reported that their child was interested or very interested in the StoryWalk. And most visitors said what they enjoyed most was all of it, in terms of looking at the story, the bilingual text, and the activities. And these are some of the comments that we got from visitors. Most of them were positive. This was a great idea. The StoryWalk was an incredible find. Wonderful project, with some suggestions of a couple of other titles, being Where the Wild Things Are or Green Eggs and Ham. This is also great for special needs. We've got a comment in Spanish. Charming. Thank you for using 2 languages. Clever way to fill the extra spots. And I think that they mean the activities that we inserted. Just very encouraging to see from a community building perspective. And then for a neutral comment, we had a suggestion to choose books that have won literary prizes, and we had a negative comment, put facts about the park and not a story. So we can move on to the next one. So unfortunately, Heather is not with us today, and I do have some images of her StoryWalk out in Farmville, and I'm aware that she does various events out there through the Farmville Public Library, but again, she's not going to be with us today, so I'm sorry that I can't give you more information about hers. We can go ahead to the next slide. So, in conclusion, StoryWalks provide excellent opportunities for libraries to partner with local organizations, engage community members, and promote early childhood literacy, families, and health. Special partnerships can form when libraries work with local parks departments to provide physical StoryWalks and with other libraries to provide family events to collaborate on best practices. Implementing a new StoryWalk takes careful planning, but based on personal observation and results from local surveys, our community members in Eastern North Carolina are really enjoying these programs. Visitors report enjoying special features at StoryWalks, such as bilingual text and activity prompts. Based on our survey results, observation, and discussions with visitors, community members of all ages are visiting our StoryWalks in Farmville and Greenville. Choosing flat, accessible walking areas for story trails helps to encourage multi-generational use by seniors and families of very young children who may be in strollers or wagons during their visit. When planning story trail activities, one should also be mindful that visitors may have differing abilities. Therefore, it's wise to include some activities that require little to no motion. Lastly, new and existing story trails can be promoted by engaging the community through social media and local news or by setting up an informational table at a local event. And consider reaching out to your parks department or other local agencies that serve families to advertise new story titles and special events. And looking ahead for us at ECU, in Greenville, we're continuing to plan these family story times, and we are successfully through our first year of offering the story walks, and we're at about the end of our grant period. We do hope to add more story walks here in Greenville in the future. And then lastly, I have a questions. I forgot I had the slide. So I've got some recommended resources for you as well. And these are some web pages and a webinar recording that's got more advice and strategies about beginning a story walk. So my contact information is there on the left. You're welcome to follow up with me if you have other story walk or related questions. And there's Heather's email as well. And then finally, I'm happy to take any questions. And if I can't completely answer it now, need to follow up with you via email, I'd be happy to do that too. I do not see any questions in the chat, but do our other hosts see anything that I don't see? Thank you very much.
I don't see any. Devin, I don't know if you have a different view of the Q&A. But you can also just put them in the chat if you all have questions as well.
I have a question that was private message to me that asks, did you consider nonfiction books?
Yes, and I believe that I did select a couple of them ultimately. So mostly fiction, but there were a few, just a couple. Mm-hmm. Well, I guess we're about done, and we're only about 13 minutes early, so without having the other presenter. So I think that worked out pretty well. And if anybody wants to contact me because you think of a story walk question for me later, you are more than welcome to send me an email and reach out. This was a wonderful project to work on, by the way. It was very fulfilling to be able to see our community members come out, and these little children get so excited to be in the park and to see something new and to have been a part of that. And I think it's going to be enjoyed for many, many years. The materials that we went with were really durable, so I hope it's going to be around for a long time. Would you consider raising the age range of books based off the QR survey age range? Yes, because we'd had older kids on the that were tending to visit than the age range of the books that we originally selected. But I wouldn't make that decision just yet off of about 3 months worth of data, because I think that perhaps as time goes on and the word gets out more about StoryWalks to parents of younger children that are more storytime age, then we might see an increase. So it's just going to depend. But if it stays that older kids tend to be coming to the StoryWalk more often, then yes, I definitely would consider changing that age range. And I think the challenge would be finding titles that don't have but so much text that are for slightly older children. And I will say that having the books available bilingually is also something great for those kids that may be a little bit older for that story in their native language, but they've got an excellent bilingual opportunity right there to learn some new words, for one thing. So.
If there are any other questions, feel free to put any more in the chat while I give the spiel. But thank you so much, Laura, for today's presentation. It was awesome. And thank you all for joining. This concludes the virtual day of the 2025 NC Live Annual Conference. Please keep an eye out for the feedback survey. Your feedback helps us make our annual conferences better. So please take a few minutes to let us know what you think. And if you fill out the survey, you can also be entered into a drawing for a raffle prize. So the recordings from the in-person day and the virtual day will be available on our YouTube channel soon. If you registered for either day, you will automatically receive a link to the recordings. So thank you again for joining. Thanks, Deb.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of your Monday. Take care.
Thank you.